Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our final edition of In the Blue Corner for season 2022. Vince Lochisano here with you, and accompanied once again for our last show after a 3-week absence by Steve Katib. Welcome back from holidays, Steve.
Thanks, Vince.
Opportune time for you to do so as well. See, we've just played the grand final yesterday, and it's our final program for the year, wrapping up our discussion on all things football and all things Carlton Football Club. So good to have you back, mate.
Yeah, thanks,
I hope
mate.
you enjoyed your holiday.
I did, much like Carlton did as well.
Yeah, well, it's hard to believe, but it's been 5 weeks since Carlton played their last game. It's already over a month ago. Anyway, so all of our viewers out there, feel free to join us on the show for our final one of the year. Leave us your comments, your thoughts, your opinions, questions if you have any. We're more than happy to address those on the program. We'll certainly put up your comments up on screen if they are relevant to the show. Don't forget you can do that by going into our Facebook page, In the Blue Corner, and that's the In the Blue Corner group page. And by all means, while you're there, subscribe and like our page, and you'll get all of the notifications of our shows. And you'll also be able to see the posts that come up during the week on Facebook. You can also go to our YouTube channel of the same name, In the Blue Corner, and leave your comments there as well. So we look forward to your participation. If you're joining us tonight, get your thoughts on yesterday's grand final. Unfortunately, another lopsided, one-sided affair. And, the Geelong Cats, way too good for the Sydney Swans yesterday. Unbelievable result. 20 goals, 13, 133 to Sydney Swans, 8-4-52, an 81-point thrashing. I don't know about you, Steve. I know it was probably a bit premature, but I thought at quarter time the writing was on the wall already that Geelong had Sydney's measure, and there wasn't going to be any coming back from it. Certainly not by half time.
No, and if you look at the two teams, if Sydney were to win the game, they would have had to been within reach, at half time.
Well, they were only what I would call just in reach at 36 points. That 62 to 26, the writing was on the wall, wasn't it? I mean, 17 scoring shots to 6 at half time, and a 36-point deficit when you've only scored 26 points for the first half was a far more significant 36 points than might otherwise have been the case.
I agree, absolutely. And look, we often see it in grand finals. It's either a gripping encounter or a very lopsided one. Unfortunately, this was the case. Great to see a team such as Geelong, though, at the peak of their powers. And one of my Geelong friends said, it was a perfect day and a perfect performance, essentially. And it was a great summary, really, because probably Geelong couldn't have played any better. That being said, Sydney couldn't have probably played any worse as well. And often, as I said, in grand finals, one team potentially is overawed by the situation and the other rises to the occasion and we're ready, and it was almost like it was meant to be. Look, yes, it wasn't a great grand final, but if you look at it, Geelong were the best team all year and deserved to win. I really thought probably Melbourne should have been in that grand final. I don't mean deserved it, but Melbourne, from a list profile, an age profile, a list demographic, probably had they not had such a turbulent year, probably should have played against Geelong in that grand final. I think that would have probably been the perfect grand final for the year. If you look at the two teams, yes, Melbourne had a pretty ordinary second half of the year. Sydney are an emerging young team.
And two pretty ordinary finals, it must be said.
Agreed. So when you're going to I spot on. They didn't deserve to make the grand final. I'm not saying they did, but if you looked at the
I know what you're saying. The list profiles of both clubs, it would have been a more even performance. I actually think the other deserving opponent would have been Collingwood, because they were the only team that really gave Geelong any semblance of competition since May. I mean, in that qualifying final, the scores were, I think, 72 points each with 2 or 3 minutes to go. So
yeah,
it was only a late goal that gave Geelong that game, and it could have very well been the other way around. And if Collingwood had gotten over the line in that qualifying final, things could have been very, very different yesterday.
Agreed. They didn't, and they had a great year nonetheless. Just to get to where they did. I think for Sydney, everyone's having a bit of a joke about how they've all gone missing, and everybody's making fun of that. But they're a young side, and probably it was almost a year too early for them to make a grand final.
They only just made the 8 again after a 2-year absence last year, didn't they? And they went out in the first elimination final against GWS. So it was a huge leap from finishing 7th or 8th up to basically top 2 in 1 year. But sides have done that before and been successful.
Yeah. So look, you just hope that those players, a bit like maybe GWS of 2019, aren't impacted by. Although this is probably a younger Sydney side than the GWS side was 3 years ago, you just hope those players use it as an impetus to sort of have a better year next year, and aren't impacted by it. But I think Sydney are still a very, very good team. It was just an off day. It really it was one of the and as I said, I think they're probably shown up that it was maybe a year too soon for them to make the grand final.
You do wonder whether teams that make the grand final in those circumstances and get absolutely thrashed, whether they ever really recover from that. I mean, when you look back at 2019, GWS got smashed by, I think, was it nearly 90 points by Geelong? Geelong, by Richmond. I think it was about 114 to 25. It might have been 89 points or something. They haven't recovered since that grand final. 2017, I think Adelaide got smashed by Richmond as well. I don't think they've recovered. My mind casts back to Port Adelaide of 2007 when they played Geelong and got smashed by a record 116 points. I don't think that's ever been done before. And Port Adelaide haven't really recovered since then. So
interested to get your take on this, because I know we've spoken about this before. You're talking about making finals, making a grand final, and you've also said making finals is better experience. Is it almost better for a Collingwood, let's say, to just miss the grand final and lose in a close prelim, use that as
motivation,
fuel to have that next year? Or is it better that the players and the team make the grand final, get absolutely annihilated, and then go, well, this is the standard now?
It's a good question. It's a good question. Be interested to get everyone else's thoughts on that. I personally think the further you can go, the better you are. Even if you do make a grand final and get your backsides kicked in it. That's not necessarily when I say not necessarily a bad thing. I think you've just got to make sure that you learn from it and treat it as motivation to go one better the following year, or the following years. Because if you don't compete in it, you'll never know. It's a bit like when people say to me, I'd rather not finish 8th and go out in the first final. No, I disagree with that. I'd rather get into the finals, give our players an experience of playing in a final, to feel the finals pressure. Even if they get beaten, they're better off for that experience, in my opinion. So long as they take the lessons from it, so long as they review the game, and so long as they don't make the same mistakes the second time around.
Some of those young kids to have had that grand final week,
Well, even the grand final week is an experience that a lot of people don't get to experience. And I think the Sydney
No.
players will have been better off for having experienced that this week.
I couldn't agree more.
Hey, Peter Vlahos is with us tonight. G'day, Peter. I remember Essendon getting thrashed in a grand final in 1 year and then won the grand final the year after.
Is that
I think you're
83,
referring
84?
Yeah, 1983. They made their first grand final in a long time under Sheedy, and they got smashed by Hawthorn. And then the following year, they came back and played Hawthorn again and looked like they were going to lose again.
But and then they ran over the top of them. Yeah.
At three-quarter time, Sheedy made a whole stack of moves, and they all paid off, and they ran over the top of them.
And Leon Baker. And
that was their first premiership for 19 years. I think they hadn't won one since 1965 before that. So, 84. And then the following year, they smashed Hawthorn again for the third year in a row that they played them. But this time, they're the ones that gave Hawthorn a hiding. So
then Hawthorn came back the next year and beat us.
Well,
and
there
then
you go.
So the following year. Yeah, anyway.
See how many examples you've got of teams that have lost one, then come back the year after and made amends. It does tend to happen a lot. But, I think that you're better off to make it than not make it. And at least you've given yourself a chance. You've given your fans a chance to experience something. Whereas if you don't make it at all, hey, don't forget, just because Collingwood only missed out by a point in making a grand final doesn't mean they're going to make it next year. They've got to make sure that they get better and that they improve, and only then will they make a grand final the following year. Same with Carlton. We missed out on the finals due to a 1-point loss to Collingwood in that very last game. We've got to learn. We've got to learn to do things better in those games. And so that next time that we're faced with that sort of scenario, that we know how to handle it better, that we know what to do, and we've got confidence in how to handle the situation. So, I'd rather be in those situations than not be in those situations.
Agreed.
Anyway, well, I guess what we should do is quickly review the game.
Yep.
As I said, the final scores were Geelong 20 goals, 13, 133. To the Sydney Swans, 8-4-52, an 81-point margin. Just recapping the first quarter, Steve. Geelong 6-5-41. Sydney 1 goal, 6 points.
Yeah.
Surely the writing was on the wall even then. 41-6. That was a 35-point margin already. And then, of course, the second quarter was fairly even. Probably arguably Sydney's best. 3 goals, 3 to Geelong, to Sydney's 3 goals, 2. So
I thought in the second part of that second quarter, they were going to potentially mount a little bit of a comeback into the game. But then every time Sydney got 1 or 2 goals, it wasn't very often, but when they did kick a goal or two, Geelong answered pretty easily, didn't they?
Well, funnily enough, in that second quarter, it went Geelong scored a goal, then Sydney got a goal, then Geelong got a goal, then Sydney got a goal, then Geelong got a goal, then Sydney got a goal. So if anything, it was Sydney answering Geelong's goals to maintain that margin at around the 35, 36-point mark. But again, by half-time, 62-26, a 36-point margin has been hauled in before, as we Carlton supporters know, back in 1970, 44 points. Yeah. But when it's 36 points down and you've only scored 26 for the first half, and you've only got 6 scoring shots to show for it, that 36-point margin must seem like a hell of a mountain when you've only scored 26 for a half. And I always thought, even at halftime, this game's shot to pieces. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought the same. And then 5 minutes into that third quarter, it confirmed it.
Geelong just went bang, bang, bang and scored 3.
Well, it wasn't.
Then
it
4,
wasn't
then 5, then 6 goals in a row.
It wasn't just the goals. It was the mistakes that were made. I think it was McCartan. McCartan turned one over to Close in that second
turnover.
goal.
Goals from turnover.
And Sydney were rabbits in the headlights because rather than that quick ball movement that they have previously, that slingshot style football, they were over-possessing, over-handballing, one or two more possessions than what they needed. And that was because of the doubt that Geelong was placing in their mind.
Oh, the pressure meter must have been going off the charts because Geelong were really putting the pressure on Sydney to the point where the amount of fumbling that was going on in the Sydney backline was something I hadn't seen.
And they were going
honestly, I think that's probably Sydney's worst performance for the year.
Yeah, they were going backwards and hesitating and very, very slow to move the ball, second guessing themselves. I mean, that's to Geelong's credit, though, right? That's the pressure they placed on them.
My word, yep.
Yeah, we got a comment from John Holden here. I think you're
G'day, John Holden. Nice to see him with us this evening. As usual, Geelong of 2022 had so much similarity to Carlton of 1995. Yes, indeed they did. 16 wins in a row. Older list, halftime margin, almost the same. Got out to 83 points in front in the last quarter. Yeah, the amount of similarities was incredible between the Geelong side of this year and the Carlton side of 95. I could go through even more similarities for you if you want me to, but I think that'd probably bore people. But in all seriousness, it was an incredible journey that they went on. And look, in the end, you just had to have nothing but admiration for the way they went about it. Their captain, Selwood, who's just taken over this year from Stephen Kernahan, our premiership captain of 95, as the player who has captained more games in the AFL in its history than anyone else. Took over that mantle from Stephen Kernahan this year. He has been an absolute inspiration to that team. Agreed. And you can see why the culture at Geelong is so successful when you've got people like him as the captain of the club. I've got nothing but good things to say about Joel Selwood. He's been absolutely sensational.
The Geelong side that Carlton played against, though, who knocked us out of the finals the year before and lost the grand final the year before, were an older list, though, than the Sydney side that Geelong played. That is the only probably difference in that comparison, I would think. But
probably.
You are right.
Yeah. Look, there were a lot of Carlton players in 95 that were in their 30s, Williams, Kernahan, Bradley, Spalding, Hannah, Peter Dean, the list goes on. A lot of these players were thought to have been too old, too slow, too washed up, and yet they proved all the doubters wrong in that year, losing only the 2 games and winning 16 in a row to finish off with a premiership. Geelong did exactly the same this year.
We had a mix of youth, though, too.
We did. But I'm saying that Geelong had just as many, if not more. In fact, when you go through the Geelong list of yesterday, there's even more players in their 30s to have played in yesterday's game. It must have been the oldest team in the history of AFL grand finals. It's amazing. Joel Selwood, obviously, Paddy Dangerfield, Tom Hawkins, Isaac Smith, who won the Norm Smith medal. Wasn't that a great story? Cam Guthrie, Reece Stanley, they're all well into their 30s.
They are, but they had a lot of 18, 20, 19, 20-year-olds, De Koning, Close. There was still I think there was a gap between that 30-odd-year-old player and that 22-year-old player. I think there was a little bit of a gap there, but you are right. Mitch Duncan, another one as an example.
Mitch Duncan's another one in his 30s, yeah. In fact, Mitch Duncan, I think, came on as a sub in the 2011 premiership team when Geelong beat Collingwood. So that's his second medal, along with Selwood and Hawkins. And obviously Isaac Smith's gotten his 4th after winning 3 with Hawthorn. Yeah, there's another thing. The Norm Smith medalist in both of those grand finals, 95 and 2022, were players that were recruited from other teams. We had Greg Williams, and he came to us from Sydney Swans. So,
let's look at Geelong, and they do talk about Stephen Wells, but I think Stephen Wells has done a remarkable job, and I'm not talking about draft picks here. You look at their mature age recruiting. And count Kelly in that, even though he left and went to West Coast, maybe hasn't flourished over there, but they've certainly been compensated for him very, very well. considering. You look at all the mature age players that he's picked up, even players that didn't play, say Menengola as an example.
Yep.
I mean, the guy's an absolute genius, and how he's picking them. He's not just picking anyone, but he's picking.
Well, they haven't had the number one
Stengel
picks
as
that
another
we've
one,
had.
right? Yeah.
Well, they haven't. They've built this team around a nucleus of senior players, and they've kept the faith. They didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater when it didn't quite work in recent years. I mean, since Chris Scott started at Geelong in 2011, they've only missed the finals once in 12 seasons. Once. Yeah. And every other season they're in there. They've got a shot at it. They're in contention. How they've been able to do that is amazing. And you've got to take your hat off to their list management team and whoever's in charge of it, because they've very, very rarely had a low draft pick from the national draft. So their ability to identify talented players from other sides that can come in and add to their squad. They got Isaac Smith when he was in his 30s. He left Hawthorn, and in the last, what has it been, 3 years since he left Hawthorn? Yeah, he's been fantastic. And look at that. He wins the Norm Smith medal in the grand final yesterday. So, it takes a real eye for talent to be able to achieve those sorts of trades. And they didn't just, believe all the doubters and all of the journalists who said, they're too old and too slow and too had it. They kept tinkering with their list until they got the mix right.
They also got a good group of kids in, but the senior players could support those kids. So it wasn't just getting kids in; it was actually having. And let's be honest, right? Because this is a Carlton program. That is exactly what Carlton did not and could not do. When you talk about the Mark LaJudice relentless pursuit of sustained success, or whatever propaganda it was.
Yeah, they're just words.
They're absolute rubbish, right? When essentially we got rid of all our players, or allowed them to go, or got rid of them, or whatever happened, senior players, and then Bolton just had kids and
not much to work with.
And absolutely, and that was the full-on rebuild, demolish the house basically, and start all over again. When really it's a decent house, it's just about needed some renovation and needed to be worked with.
Well, look, when Judd retired in 2015, that left a big vacuum from a leadership point of view. I guess history will now show that the 7 seasons that have happened since then have highlighted the skinny, if you like, or the lack of depth, if you like, in not only our talent in the list, but also leadership in the list.
Couldn't agree more.
And what's, I think, a glaring omission from our list compared to Geelong is that we don't have players that have had finals experience, or a lot of finals experience in our list. No. We haven't brought in an Isaac Smith like Geelong did at age 30, 31. Why don't we do that? Why don't we bring in some people who have experienced that and can impart that knowledge and that experience onto our other younger players? We've brought in all these players from other clubs on big contracts, but not too many of them have done too much in finals, whether it be Mitch McGovern or Zach Williams or Jack Martin, these types, Adam Chera. Adam Chera's young.
They've been recruited on potential.
Yeah.
Really,
yeah.
Right? They've been potentially, I mean this in a sarcastic way, fantastic YouTube highlights all of them have, right? But what you can't see, what you actually can't see is the leadership behind the scenes. What you can't see is the consistency, the way they prepare each week and all of that. That's really what your Isaac Smiths or those other senior players really would bring to the club. Yeah. And they're not actually going to be as expensive either. Yet the potential of these players is, you're working on a player that you think has this huge upside and they're going to be a champion and they're going to throw big dollars at them. But but are they really? Do they really show those leadership qualities? Are they really going to bring the rest of the team along with them on the journey, or are they all about themselves? And have they only just come for the money?
Well, this is the question. Why did they come? Did they come to Carlton because they respect the club and they love its culture and
They're going to say
have seen it at work? No, they're here for the contract. They're here for the money. Yeah. That's what they're here for. And that's what worries me about our list, is that we've got too many players like that and not enough who are attracted to Carlton because of its success-based culture. And when you look at Joel Selwood and what he represents at Geelong, and just see some of those things that he did yesterday, like taking Gary Ablett's young son out through the banner at the start. He went up to the other young guy at the end of the game once they won the flag.
The water boy.
The boy from he had Down syndrome.
Yeah. He actually does the water for them. He actually.
Yeah. I mean, that was a touching moment, and to do what he did with the boots and all that sort of thing for the other young chap.
Our PR department couldn't invent that if they tried. They couldn't script that from that was actually genuine, not propaganda.
Yeah. No, that was all from Joel. There was nothing scripted or planned about it. It was Joel Selwood. That's what it showed you. A glimpse into the character of the guy. And that's one of the reasons I respect him so much.
So without taking this, because I know we've got some guests coming on tonight shortly, Chris Beach and Joe, to give us their takes on the grand final. While you do mention all of that, I just thought it's important to link it to the individual achievements that fortunately we've had, but unfortunately we've had as well. Now, what is he talking about? Well, what I mean is, essentially, you've got a Coleman medalist and a Brownlow medalist, and that's fantastic from an individual perspective.
Yep.
You don't have a team, right? You don't have a team performance. You don't have an evenness. It can contribute from a contribution perspective.
Oh, by the way, we've got another individual award that was won over the weekend. Charlie Curnow won the longest kick competition across the Yarra with a kick of about 63 metres, which was pretty darn good.
Yeah.
But again, more individual awards.
Well, look, I did actually see that, and it was a good kick. It was a very good kick. I mean, that's not easy coming off cold and just basically kicking at 60 metres. It's not easy.
That's right.
So
you can twang a hamstring doing that pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I mean, you look at that and you go, well, it's great, and we do celebrate those champions because they are champions of the club, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what's it saying? What is it really saying? It's too few. It's too many individuals. It's too many messiahs. It's too many.
Well, look, what we've got to do is harness all of this talent and get it to play in a team environment where they're achieving team success. That's what we've got to be able to do. It's all right to have a Coleman medalist or two Coleman medalists now in 2 years, a Brownlow medalist, a longest kick winner, any other individual awards you want to name. But at the end of the day, five individuals who made the All-Australian squad, and 3 of them made the final 22. All of that, they're all individual accolades. But we've got to harness all of this and get it to perform as a team, because as a team, they failed to make the finals.
Well, Vince, if you had...
beggars belief, really, when you look at the talent that's in the list.
If you had... I know we're going back down memory lane or digging up skeletons or sleeping dogs or whatever you want to say, right? But
digging up old bones, yes.
yeah. So if you had a fit Charlie Curnow, and Patrick Cripps without the back fractures and banged up as he was,
you're talking about last year, as in
and
2021,
the year before maybe not so much. You had all of those players.
Mm-hmm. Add in a George Hewitt and an Adam
support around
Lewis Young. Yeah. David Teague probably would have coached us to 12 wins as well.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
True.
they're all hypotheticals. No one can prove it either way, but you'd think that if David Teague had have had Charlie Curnow for the whole season instead of just the last 4 rounds coming off. Well, that's it. Another thing, a relatively soft draw. Yeah. You could argue the point that he would have probably achieved 12 wins as well. We don't know that, but obviously having Harry and Charlie in the same team made a big difference this year compared with last year, where it was basically Harry for most of the year and no one else.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the midfield depth because we didn't have George Hewitt and we didn't have Adam Chera. And we didn't have Lewis Young down back to cover for injuries. So, yeah, I mean, maybe they would have achieved that. But look, that's not going to achieve anything now. I think we've got to get past all that. What we now have to do is really put all of our talent together, all of our Coleman medalists and Brownlow medalists and longest kick winners and all Australians and all that, and put them all together and put them together with all the other players that are on the list and work out a way to get this collection of players to play as a unit and play as a team and play in the same fashion as what Geelong's been able to do. You see, when you look at Geelong this year, how many real stars have come out and won awards or, polled 30 votes on a Brownlow? No, they play as a team. Collingwood's the same. When you look at Collingwood's performance this year, it's all team-oriented stuff. I mean, for an 18-year-old first-year player in Nick Dacos to come out and get the equal highest votes in the Brownlow in his first year of football is amazing. But it just goes to show you that they don't rely on one or two big names to kick bags of goals or to get them across the line in most of their matches. They're playing very much as an even team. Collingwood and Geelong, more than anyone else this year, were playing like that. Melbourne tended to rely on their stars like Petrarca and Oliver and Gawn. And if they didn't play well, they probably lost. Sydney, they also played very much as a team. You could say that they probably, glorified Buddy Franklin more than they should. He had a stinker yesterday. And I do wonder whether they'll ever win a premiership with him in the team. But anyway, I guess time will tell next year whether they can go one better or not. I think there's a case to be said that you're better off having an even team of players that there's no, outstanding individuals. See, if you look at Geelong, who are their best players? You'd have to say their most experienced ones, wouldn't you? Selwood, Hawkins, Jeremy Cameron, Dangerfield,
Blitzarves,
Tom Stewart, Blitzarves, these types. But they're not, 26 votes or that sort of thing in the Brownlow, are they?
No.
They're not kicking Coleman, or they're not winning Coleman medals. See, Tom Hawkins could probably be a Coleman medalist if he wanted to, but he's such a team player that he gives off more goals than he probably kicks.
Yep.
And he has played like that for quite a few seasons now. So it's all about team, and it's all about what's best for the team. That's what wins your premierships. It certainly does in my view anyway.
Just got a comment here, Vince.
Hello, Lana Owens. Nice to see you for our final show of the year. Spoke to Cookie, I assume you mean Brian Cook, at the Carlton in business function the other night. And he was a lovely man. Yes, he is a lovely man. Thanked me and my mum for the 32-year consecutive membership, but promised we are not happy with this year on field and will definitely be there next year. Well, that's nice to know, Lana. What I want to know is why hasn't Brian or anyone else from the club, since we lost that game against Collingwood, come out in public and declared that we failed and declared that we did not meet our minimum expectation of making finals? Why has there been crickets coming out of Luke Sayers' office? Because that's all I can hear at the moment, crickets. No one is speaking to anyone. No one from the club in a leadership position has addressed the members in a public way. And I think that's really, really disappointing.
Well, and
it's one thing for Brian Cook to tell you that at a Carlton in business function, and that's all well and good, I believe you. But someone should have come out and spoken to the membership as a whole, in my view.
Well, I mean, if you look at John Longmire yesterday, I thought that was as frank and as and this is a successful team, albeit they didn't go that final
hurdle.
Yeah, correct. But essentially
they made it to the big dance.
Yeah, you look at John Longmire.
16 other teams that didn't make it to the big dance.
You look at the way he spoke. That was a fantastic press conference.
That was owning it, wasn't it? He owned it.
Spot on.
He owned the loss. He owned the mistakes. He even said, the decision to play Sam Reid, that was a mistake. We shouldn't have done it.
Couldn't jump. Yeah.
We're not prepared as a club to come out and admit when we got it wrong. Everyone is too afraid to say we got it wrong. It's almost like they've been infected with the Arthur Fonzarelli disease from Happy Days. You remember when he comes out and says, I was... and he couldn't say it. Well, why can't we just admit to where we're at and be honest with our supporters and our members? It makes me wonder. It really does.
Well, you know what? You don't even know when they're being honest or not honest then anymore, because it's if you can't tell your supporters that you're disappointed and the season was a failure, even though yes, there was improvement in certain areas, we still overall
failed. It was a year of improvement. It was a year of progress. Yeah. But it wasn't a success. It wasn't a year that you would call successful, because we did not achieve what everyone, including the president, said was the minimum expectation.
And with 12 games to go, we won 4 of them. So we won 33% of our last 12 games, which essentially for a team to want to play finals,
it's not a great way to be going into finals, is it? On a downward trend.
Even if you made it, even if you just fell in.
If you just fell in, you lost your last 4 games. I mean, yeah. But anyway, look, I hope that things come together next year and that we do find a way to get this team to play with consistency and synergy and chemistry, and in a fashion that achieves wins in those situations that we found ourselves in those last 4 weeks, where we I don't know how we did it, but we found ways to lose games that we really should have won. Hopefully next year we'll find ways to win those games and to comfortably make it into the 8, and maybe even, who knows, maybe even top 4. Sky's the limit.
Other teams,
we shouldn't be putting a ceiling on what we can achieve.
I agree. Other teams will all be doing the same thing though, so it won't be easy. That's for sure.
That's for sure.
Well, now,
all right, Steve,
we've got Chris Beach in the studio waiting.
Yeah, let's get Beachy in, shall we?
Yeah, we'll bring Chris in and get his thoughts on the grand final.
There he is, the great man.
How are we, gents?
Good to see you, Beachy, the man with the best library in the whole world, right behind you.
Thanks.
Look at him. He's got books everywhere.
Well, books and a few other things, but yeah, it does its job, boys. It does its job.
Yes, the librarian is back with us. I'm sure everyone will be delighted with that. We have to sort through thousands and thousands of letters every week that we get from all of our viewers across the world. Wanting to see more of Beachy on the show. So it's good to see you, mate. And look, what did you think? Briefly, what's your take on yesterday's grand final? And we all know who won, but why do you think they were so dominant?
Well, the first thing I'm going to say, Vince, is I was actually quite surprised with how easy they made it look. I mean, you said yourself, Vince, keeping 6 goals in the first quarter. By that point, I was thinking it's game over. Sydney,
it is.
Sydney, I thought, just had no answers. I mean, yes, they tried to fight back, but what I want to know is where the pressure running was at for most of the game with Geelong. Because from what I saw, it felt like it was a 200-plus all game, and Sydney just had no idea how to combat it.
Yep.
And this is coming from a side that's been as consistent as Geelong each year, and they've usually had a pretty good record against the Cats in recent memory as well, be it down at Cardinia Park or at the SCG. So
Yep.
to me, it was quite a big surprise actually.
Yep. Yes, and well, that pressure that Geelong put on was just amazing, wasn't it? I mean, I don't think I've ever seen Sydney players fumble and, attempt kicks and attempt hand passes that didn't hit targets. Their disposal efficiency must have been absolutely abysmal yesterday, Sydney. I can barely remember a passage of play that was flowing from back line into forward line and transpired into a goal. Every one of their goals seemed to be they were scrappy goals. They weren't really sort of attractive goals to watch, even on a highlights reel. Even if you saw all 8 goals that Sydney kicked, how many of them were what you would call impressive chains of play from the back line into the forward line? I can't remember one.
No, you're right. And what really, really stuck out in my observations was how many Geelong players were surrounding the one Sydney player with the ball. Now, there were a couple of times where I think they tried to, just barge through, but they just couldn't.
They swarmed them, didn't they?
It was like they were hitting a brick wall repeatedly, and it just continued to happen.
Yeah, the Geelong players were like bees swarming over to the beehive, weren't they? Every time Sydney had the ball, and Sydney just didn't know how to handle it. They turned it over time and time and time again. Geelong were the only team that seemed to have time to assess their options and deliver properly from one player to the next. They were the only team that were able to do that for the whole day. Nothing changed from go to woe.
No, exactly right. And, they had probably at minimum 3 players available each time. So if one player got in trouble, they thought, right, you're available. Bang, let's go there. Oh, no, I'm in trouble. Hang on, got someone ahead. Bang. It was like they had 30 seconds each time, but it was a slow 30 seconds. Because the Swans just could not get into position and get themselves into pressure situations against Geelong. It just didn't happen for them all day.
Yep. Do you know that there was only one little patch of play for the whole day that Sydney scored 2 consecutive goals?
Well, there's not a surprise.
And it was right at the end. Right at the end. Sorry, it wasn't right at the end. I beg your pardon. That was Geelong that got a couple of goals. So, no, it didn't happen at all. So, Sydney did not have one patch of play where they got 2 consecutive goals. There you go. I was just looking at the trends here on my iPad, and I saw 2 goals, but that was actually Geelong. Geelong scored the third last and the second last goal of the game in succession, and then Sydney got the last to Tom Papley. That was it.
Yeah, it was just insane to watch. Insane to watch.
Well, a disappointing grand final. We've had them over the years, haven't we, Steve? We've seen 2019 when Richmond smashed GWS. 2 years earlier when Richmond pretty much smashed Adelaide Crows. I think that game was pretty much over about half time.
Yeah.
Going back a bit before that, we saw 2007
Hawthorn
when
and
Geelong...
Fremantle was probably disappointing.
Hawthorn Fremantle, that was only a 22-point... I think it was Hawthorn and Sydney in 2014. That was a smashing.
Yeah.
Of course, the West Coast game the year after, that was another smashing.
Yeah.
And a few years before that, Geelong beat Port Adelaide by 116 points in 2007. No, that was an absolute mauling.
Yeah.
So, we've been spared a lot more of those blowout grand finals in the last 20 years. But, geez, there was a few blowouts in the 80s and the 90s, wasn't there?
It certainly was. There certainly was, including Carlton in 95, which we just spoke about earlier.
Well, when you look at it, I mean, I'm just going back to my memories of the 80s through till now.
Melbourne
1983 was a blowout to Hawthorn over Essendon.
1990
85 was a blowout. Essendon smashing Hawthorn. 86, we got beaten pretty comfortably by about 42 points or something like that. I think 88 when Hawthorn smashed Melbourne by 16 goals, 96 points.
Yep.
So there was a lot more of them in the 80s.
But then 89,
then, of course,
89 was the best grand final, arguably, they say ever. It was
well, we finally got a close one. That's why.
Yeah.
But even in the 90s, I think Hawthorn smashed West Coast in 91 and then
at VFL Park.
Yes, thanks to Angry Anderson.
Yeah.
Essendon, I don't want to talk about the Essendon win over Carlton in 93, but they pretty much smashed us. 94, West Coast smashed Geelong by a huge margin. I remember in 95, yes, we smashed Geelong again by 10 goals. In fact, we were up by nearly 90 points, I think, at one stage in that last quarter. And Geelong kicked the last 5 goals of the game, Beachy.
Yeah.
To make it a 61-point victory and make the scoreboard look a little bit more respectable. 96, North Melbourne got the better of Sydney, but you wouldn't call that a mauling.
No.
97 and 98 were very competitive, but again, Adelaide took over in the last quarter in both of those games.
Yep.
99, North Melbourne had by far the better of us. They won by 6 goals. And 2000, Essendon smashed Melbourne by, what was that by? That was by another big margin.
10 goals. I think it was 10 goals.
Must have been something around 10 goals. So really, it's only since 2001 till now that we've had only maybe 4 or 5 of those. And most of the others have been competitive, thankfully.
03 with Brisbane and Collingwood was all.
Well, 03 Brisbane smashed Collingwood too,
The year before was very close.
Yes. Yeah, so anyway, we do reminisce about all of that. But, Beachy, who would you have given your votes to, mate, yesterday? 3, 2 and 1? I assume they're all going to be Geelong players.
Yes, yes, they are. I would have given 3 to Dangerfield. He was getting his teammates involved from the word go. He had
a lot of score involvements and a lot of goal assists, didn't he?
Yeah. So I had 3 to Dangerfield. I had 2 to Isaac Smith, even though he was the Norm Smith medalist. It was hard for me to ignore him. Aggressive all day, kept going, and put it on the scoreboard where it really counted. And 1 vote. Now I'm actually tossing and turning over this one, but I'm going to give it to Stengel because he's been a story of the year for Geelong. He's had some trouble off field, obviously, when he was with Adelaide. He comes to Geelong where Eddie Betts is, which, by the way, is another great story in itself. He finally has a premiership as an assistant coach rather than as a player. Although in my opinion, we'd like Eddie to have one as a player. But anyway, I digress. Look, Stengel, I thought, stood up well. He got himself in the game. He was making impacts pretty quickly, and he was consistent most of the game.
Fair enough. And if you were giving votes to just the Sydney players, who would you have given your 3-2-1-2 for Sydney? In a very disappointing effort.
Robbie Fox would be the 3 there. He actually did quite well considering what his teammates were doing. He had a pretty tough job trying to keep Jeremy Cameron quiet, and he did quite well for that most of the game up until the last quarter.
It's only in the last quarter that Jeremy Cameron kicked a couple of goals on him. Yeah. Otherwise, he would have been, really one that could fully hold his head up. Yeah,
and then the 2-on-1 is actually quite hard because, as you said earlier, Vince, the Swans just had no answers to them whatsoever. Let's see here. Yep, so here we go. Well, I'll give 2 to Chad Warner. You know, he kicked
Yep.
2 goals, 29 disposals. You can't
Yep.
really ignore that.
No.
And I'll probably give my 1 to. Gee, that's even harder, to be honest. Maybe Luke Parker, because, you know,
Yep.
23 touches, not
Yep.
kicking, obviously, but, you know, still
Yep.
doing what he had to do. So
They were the 3 that I had in mind too, in a different order, but they were the 3. I think they were clearly Sydney's better players, and the rest of them were just struggling to have any impact on the game. I actually had it the other way around. I thought Warner was their best player and their most impactful player. 2 goals. He was the only multiple goal kicker for them. Had more possessions than the others, and he made more of his possessions than any of the others. He had more impact with them, and he also laid 6 tackles. And I thought he could hold his head up a lot more than the others. I gave Fox my 2 and Parker 1. But from a Geelong perspective, I actually thought Isaac Smith was the best player on the ground. Again, 3 goals, 32 possessions, including 23 kicks, and also, you know, at a disposal efficiency of 84%. You know, that's elite, absolutely elite. Also took 12 marks as well. And I just thought that was clearly best on ground performance. I gave Dangerfield 2 because of the amount of score involvements and score assists or goal assists that he was involved in. 27 possessions as well. And look, there was that many players that could have easily got the 1. I ended up going with the captain, Joel Selwood. Again, 26 possessions. You know, he had a really good game. And to finish it off with that fantastic goal in the last quarter that he kicked, and then to see all of his players come around and rush over to him, that was just sensational to see. So I thought Joel Selwood deserved to get that 3rd vote. I mean, it could easily have given it to Mitch Duncan. He had a really good game. Mark Blitzarves had a very good game in the ruck or relief ruck and around the ground. Even Stanley, the number 1 ruckman, I thought did very well. You know, Tom Hawkins kicked 3 goals, a little bit inaccurate, probably could have kicked more, kicked 3 goals, 4 for the day. And Tyson Stengel, for all the reasons that you gave before, 4 goals in the grand final. Fantastic story. What about you, Stevie? Who did you give your 3-2, 1-2 for Geelong and for Sydney?
Yes, Sydney, I'll agree with exactly your votes, Vince, there, with Warner and Fox and
Parker.
Yep. Agreed. That was probably, those 3 were the easy, although hard ones to pick. For definitely Smith, more so because when the game was there to be won in the first half.
He had the impact, didn't he?
Yeah. So it's easy to get possessions late in the game when, you know, you're 10 goals up, but really,
and that's what Dangerfield did when the game was pretty much over. Yeah.
But to Dangerfield's credit, I think he influenced the clearances a lot as well in the centre.
No doubt.
And
no doubt.
Look, thinking about it, you know, if Button maybe unfortunately the Swans not having Josh Kennedy available certainly, you know,
impacted.
Showed up. Yeah, it did because they were.
Well, they lacked that experience, didn't they? I mean, other than Parker, really they were lacking a lot of experience in their midfield and around the ground. They looked bereft of any experience. To be honest,
in the contested situation and clearance situation, I think Kennedy would have been really important. I'm not saying the game would have been different. Of course, it wouldn't have been.
Sure,
but it would have been a lot closer. So danger for 2. Like you, I liked Blitzarv's game. I liked a lot of players. I gave it to Hawkins. He was also impactful early and brought a lot of other players into the game.
My word.
As well.
First 2 goals were Hawkins getting it out of the ruck like he did against us. Did you notice that?
Yes.
And he was doing that against Sydney's number 1 ruckman in Hickey. I mean, how Hickey couldn't have woken up to all this is beyond me. I don't understand.
And they didn't have anyone sitting behind the stoppage either to defend that. But but well done to him, because early in the game, in that sort of first 15 minutes, it was, there was no scoring really. It was pretty, although the ball was camped in Geelong's half, it was still tight.
Yes.
And Geelong needed someone to break that, break the damn wall.
Yep.
To break.
And Hawthorn managed to do it twice out of the ruck.
He imposed himself on the game. So, again, sure, Sydney Geelong would have won the game even if he hadn't have done that, but it was important, which then paved the way for all those quick goals in consecutive minutes that Smith helped produce.
Yeah. Well, again, it's all about making an impact when the game is there to be won, isn't it? In fact, that's one of the reasons I also gave Selwood my one vote, because he actually had 12 possessions in the first quarter when the game was there to be won.
Yeah. It's hard to keep. Again, you could raffle those votes. And also Mitch Duncan I thought was good as well.
Yes, Mitch Duncan was very good. All right. Well, we've got our votes for the game. Can I just get your thoughts, guys, on two players for Sydney? Buddy Franklin and Isaac Heaney. And also, if I could throw in a third one, what did you think of Sam Reid and his decision to play when clearly he was not right? So those three, Franklin, Heaney and Reid. What did you think, Beachy, quickly?
Well, it's a good question, because Geelong faced the same situation with Max Holmes, and they said, nah, we're not risking you. The game's too important. You're going to sit out. Now, I'm going to admit I've actually experienced this at a local cricket club level at juniors, and I probably felt the same way he would have felt that I would have felt when that happened to me. So, but you see, the difference is he was part of a winning side. The context, the junior cricket club I was playing for, which is the same one I'm still playing for in seniors, they lost. So that's different. So disappointing there, but sometimes that hard call has to be made. Whereas on the opposite side of the coin, Sydney have tried to risk it. It hasn't worked. But as you gents pointed it out earlier, John Meyer said, yeah, we screwed up on that one. We shouldn't have done that. But it is what it is.
I did wonder whether Longmire was having a sort of a disguised dig at the player for not declaring himself unfit to play, because clearly from the very start he just wasn't moving very well and wasn't impacting anything.
Heaney, I thought, was very quiet up on grand final day compared to...
He didn't get a lot of service, in fairness to him. He wasn't getting the ball kicked down to him in a really sort of systematic fashion, was he?
No. But then again, neither was Franklin. Franklin was getting blanketed each time the footy went anywhere near him. But you see, that's a credit to Geelong's defence. That's a credit to the matchup that he had. I believe he might have had Tom DeConing's brother on him at one point, which is Sam, who actually got a goal in the late stages of that grand final.
I'd say Sam is Tom's brother now. Wouldn't you think? Who's the more famous? Anyway.
You mean Tom is Sam's brother?
Sorry, Tom is Sam's. Yeah.
Well, anyway. I knew what you were trying to say, Steve, and I completely agree. Because,
but that Geelong defence worked so well, didn't it? I mean, a lot of unheralded players, they don't necessarily get a lot of possessions, they don't necessarily get a lot of votes or in the Brownlow or anything like that, but boy, do they work well as a unit. I'm talking about players like Buse and Henry and Zach Guthrie and O'Connor and Tom Stewart, of course, who's probably the most high profile of them. What a defence. Sam DeConning. You know, they did their job so admirably for the whole game. They never gave Sydney an inch.
No.
Even in that last quarter when they're 85 points in, or 80 points in front, they were still smothering and tackling and harassing. And, you know, that was just the height of professionalism. In fact, that was the only part of the 95 grand final that I think wasn't the same in 2022, because Carlton clearly, took the foot off the pedal, put the cue in the rack, and didn't care about Geelong scoring 5 goals in that last 10 minutes. Whereas Geelong, no, they weren't going to let that happen.
No,
they continued to press forward and give more and more players an opportunity to kick a goal.
You're absolutely right.
Even young Sam DeConning kicked the first goal of his career right on the goal line when Paddy Dangerfield kicked it towards the goal square, and he marked it and put it through, and that was his first goal of his career. Fantastic in a grand final.
Exactly right, and boy, was he very excited about that, and good on him, because he's worked his ass off the entire season with Geelong. He's had no better mentor than Tom Stewart the entire season as well, who has taught him his craft and just worked on it consistently. Example, when we played them and he shut down Mackay.
Yeah. Did you notice too, guys, that when Geelong had injuries this year or suspensions, that they were able to adequately cover for them in a similar fashion to what Carlton did in 95. I remember in 95 we had Kernahan out for a few weeks. We had Williams out for a few weeks with a wrist injury. We had other players that had to take a break through injury or suspension.
Spalding was injured.
Spalding might have been injured for a while.
Yeah.
And yet we covered for those players during the course of the year. And I think Geelong did that when Tom Stewart was rubbed out with the suspension for, I think it might have been 2 or 3 weeks. Might have even been 4 weeks.
We played them when Stewart was rubbed out.
Yeah, so they still covered for that loss. And that just goes to show you that even if you've got a star player like him missing from the team, there's still other players that can come in and play a role and still get the team over the line. That's what you call a professional outfit. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, Beachy, thanks very much for coming on, mate, and giving us your thoughts about the game. Thanks also for all of those times throughout the course of this season that you came in and covered for either one of us that might not have been available, namely Steve. Especially the last 3 weeks, mate. You did a fantastic job in helping us out there. And we wish you all the best with your cricket season coming up.
Thank you.
And no doubt we'll see you again on the In the Blue Corner channel as you do your shows with Joe, and obviously you also partake in some of the Blue Abroad shows where you come on and put your 2 bobs worth with Terry and people like that. So no doubt all of your millions of fans around the world will get to see the movie star looks of Chris Beach on other social media channels throughout the next 6 months as we await the start of the 2023 season.
Thanks, Vince, and thanks, Steve, as well. Thanks to obviously everybody involved in this channel, whoever makes their comments. I might not pay much attention to them, but they don't go unnoticed, because
good on you, mate.
When we're all yabbering away, we can all be quite focused on this. But thanks again, guys. Hopefully, I'll be hearing from you sometime soon.
Beautiful. There you go. Even our good mate John Holden's wished you a great summer of cricket, Beachy.
Thank you.
All right, mate. All the best.
Thanks, Beachy.
And thanks for that too, John Holden. You're a great man and a very loyal listener and viewer to our show.
Friend of the program, as they say.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Joe's going to come on. It doesn't look like he is. Is he? Is he ready to come on?
No, he's not.
He's not. Right.
No.
We were hoping to get our Grand Poobah, Joe Lutzer, to come on from Bangkok. He must be tied up still. I'm not talking about that literally. I'm talking about metaphorically. Although he'd probably enjoy that if it was literally. Anyway, we wish him all the best and thank him for the opportunity that he gives us to do our show here on In the Blue Corner every Sunday night after Carlton plays its match for the round and obviously through the finals series as well. Stevie, before we finish up, is there anything else you'd like to discuss before we finish up for the year?
No, that's it. I think we've said it all. What about yourself, Vince?
Yeah, I think we've covered the grand final. There are other sort of issues that we could have gone into for the week, but I think we'd probably better off to stay away from those. But
well,
all I can say is we'll
until
take
there's more information.
What's that?
Probably, my view would be just to wait until we hear more information.
You're talking about those allegations that were made during the week against Alistair Clarkson and Chris Fagan. Yes, I agree with that. I made a comment on a post that was up on the In the Blue Corner Facebook page during the week where people were starting to get a bit presumptuous in my view, and I basically appealed to everyone to take a chill pill. Let's wait and see what happens first. Let's wait and see what the investigation shows and brings out. Let's allow everyone to have their say. Anyone who just automatically believes one person's word against another, well, that's their prerogative if that's what they want to do. But I personally think everyone should be given an opportunity to be heard and to put across their version of events before we pass judgment. So that's all I'll say about that. But other than that, it's been a great season. 2022 could have been even better if you're a Carlton supporter had we made finals. Bit disappointing in the end from that perspective. But look, I do believe we will make finals next year. Mind you, the pressure really will be on. But hopefully the players can rise to the occasion and the coaches can find a way to get our team to play in such a way that will hold them in good stead should they make finals. So I hope that they do that next year. I'm sure all of you out there are with me on that we hope to certainly make finals next year. Your final thoughts, Steve, before we close off?
Well, I mean, you really they have to make finals, don't they? They have to. Yeah, I think we just said it right. It's about looking at team. Team is the key, right? The team ethos needs to be developed. I don't think it's just about going away to stall or the Grampians and having a kumbaya, bonding session like they did. It's more than that. It's not just about trusting people around the campfire and telling stories. It's about how you actually play together. What are your actions? Who holds people accountable? Who's leading? They're the questions. And that's a cultural thing. It's not easy to change, but that's what they really have to get right. If they can get that right, then no doubt Carlton will make finals. But
I think if we have a real unified effort, if we're adopting a game plan that everyone believes in and follows and buys into, as the expression goes, they buy into it, and we can stay relatively injury-free. I mean, everyone has their injuries, but if we can have a pretty good run with injury through the year and we have most of our best 25 players available for the majority of the year, I think we can actually get up into the top 4. But there's a lot of things that have got to go right for you to achieve that. And, time will tell as to whether we're able to do it. But I think sky's the limit with this list. They are in the window right now where most of our best players are between 21 and 29. And we've got very few players that are 30 plus and very few of our best players are under 21. So, time to put our best foot forward and there's no more excuses.
Agreed. I would only say the gap between the Stars and the, shall we say, the Foot Soldiers is pretty significant though, from a talent perspective. I would say that there's that gap. Yeah. And it's about not so much the Stars getting better. It's actually about the Foot Soldiers coming up.
Yeah.
Those players improving. I don't mean individual efforts. I mean contributing to the team, as we mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I just hope that they find a way to improve the culture at the club, because when you look at the successful teams in recent years, that is the most important factor that's helped them to achieve what they've achieved. You look at Geelong this year, Melbourne last year, Richmond the year before, and the year before that, and West Coast of 2018. The cultures at all of those clubs were fantastic in those years. So we've got to be able to find that magic tonic to make it all click. And
but it isn't magic though. That's the thing. It seems like
when I say magic.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't mean technically magic, but we've got to find that elusive chemistry. Yeah, that's the word. And connection. The connection between the players has got to be really strong, and you could see that in the Geelong players yesterday. So
absolutely.
Congratulations to Geelong. They were the best team all year, and they proved it in the finals. And, well done to them, an 81-point smashing. And they won their 10th VFL, AFL Premiership Cup yesterday. So they'll certainly be another force to be reckoned with next year. For those of you who still want some more football content, the Jumper Punch boys are having their final show of season 2022 this coming Tuesday night. If you want to watch the show when it premieres on YouTube, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. The Jumper Punch, of course, on the Blue Abroad channel. The following day, you'll see the full interview that we had with Jeff Southby on the Jumper Punch channel. If you haven't already subscribe to that channel, make sure you go on and subscribe and like and all that sort of thing, and you'll see the final interview of the year with one of the 10 best Carlton players of all time, the great Jeff Southby. So look out for that.
Wasn't he? What a fullback.
Oh. And that'll be at 8 o'clock on Wednesday night with that full interview. But the Jumper Punch show with Rocco and the boys, Mars and Paul, will be on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. So don't miss it. You might even see someone on screen right now that makes a special guest appearance. But anyway, it's been a pleasure, Steve, joining you every Sunday night to go over all things Carlton and all things AFL and even a few other sports along the way. But it's been an absolute pleasure, mate, and thanks very much for being so generous with your time every Sunday night.
No, pleasure, and thank you, and thanks to everyone who shows an interest in watching us. Look, we do. It's not your typical show. We appreciate your patience and understanding. Maybe during this year we've opened your mind to a few things. We don't profess to have all the answers, but we potentially have some different points of view. And maybe in our conversations, maybe we've opened your mind and thoughts to some different points of view that you may not see in mainstream content. And if we have, that's great. And if you disagree with us, that's okay as well. But thanks for watching nonetheless.
Yes, indeed. And I'd like to thank all of you out there that have participated in the show throughout the year, and all of you who may not have participated so much but been prepared to tune in and watch us every week. Thank you very much for your loyalty, and we look forward to hopefully being here this time next year. No, not this time next year. What am I saying? Hopefully being there at the start of season 2023 for the start of yet another footy season. We certainly hope that you can join us then. So, Steve, I guess that brings to an end season 2022 on In the Blue Corner channel for you and I.
It does.
All the best for Christmas whenever that arrives. Still another almost, in fact, it's 3 months from today. Did you know that?
The AGM after it.
Yes, I'm sure you're looking forward to the AGM in February. In fact, that'll probably be the 25th as well. That'll probably be the 25th as well.
100,000 at the MCG, record crowd. No reason, no excuses. Renovations done at Carlton. No excuses for an in-person AGM. Roll up. Let's all.
Yes, it should be. It should be an AGM where people can attend in person. You're absolutely right.
Sure.
But we'll see whether that eventuates or not. So today, 25th of September, it's 3 months to go exactly to the day until Christmas. So a very Merry Christmas to all of our viewers out there whenever that time arrives, and have yourself a safe and happy end of year break whenever that arrives as well.
Likewise. And
Alrighty.
we'll see you next year, and I'd like to hopefully see some of you in person at the AGM as well.
Yes, you never know. You might see us then. All right, Steve. Thanks very much again. And to all of you out there, a very good night and see you in 2023.
Go.
Cheers. And go Blues.